You were likely the child who was praised for being so easy. You were the one who never made a fuss, the one who could entertain yourself for hours, and the one who asked for nothing. Adults probably called you an old soul, or marveled at how mature you were for your age. They saw a child who was low maintenance and disciplined, a child who did not need to be managed. But deep down, you knew something was wrong. That silence was not a sign of maturity. It was a strategy for survival. You were not quiet because you were peaceful. You were quiet because you were invisible. This is the paradox of the ignored child. In the landscape of trauma, we often look for the bruises of abuse or the scars of harsh words. We look for the things that happened to you. But the trauma of the ignored child is defined by acts of omission. It is the trauma of what failed to occur. It is the gaze that was not returned, the tears that were not soothed, and the needs that were not met. Today, we are going to explore the deep psychology of this invisibility. We will look at why you learned to disappear, how it rewired your brain, and how you can finally take up space. Number 1 involves understanding the architecture of omission. To understand your own personality, we must look at the environment that built it. The human infant has a biological imperative for connection. Attachment is as fundamental as the need for food. When a caregiving environment fails to respond to a child's emotional needs, the child undergoes a profound psychological reorganization to survive. Imagine you are a small child reaching out for comfort, but your parent looks through you like you are made of glass. They are physically there, but emotionally, they are a million miles away. To survive this existential threat, you metabolized your own needs. You reduced your psychological footprint to accommodate their limitations. You learned that having needs was dangerous. This brings us to number 2, which is the specific role you played, the lost child. Family systems theory suggests that in dysfunctional homes, children adopt roles to manage the anxiety of the system. While the scapegoat absorbs the family's shame and the hero reflects their grandiose dreams, the lost child adopts a strategy of profound withdrawal. You learned to retreat to the periphery. You developed a pseudo-independence. You learned early on that drawing attention to yourself brought only disappointment or danger. So, you learned to move silently and sit so still you disappeared. You likely retreated into fantasy worlds, books, or nature. You built an entire universe inside your head because the one outside offered you no reflection. You became an expert in solitude. The defining feature here is the belief that your existence is a burden. You operate under the assumption that safety lies in non-existence. You learned to repress your emotions until they became invisible even to you. Number 3 is a specific and painful variation of this dynamic called the glass child syndrome. This often happens if you had a sibling with severe disabilities, chronic illness, or behavioral issues. The term glass child implies that your caregivers looked right through you to see the sibling with greater needs. You were not ignored out of malice, but out of exhaustion and lack of resources. Imagine watching your parents struggle under extreme stress. You see their fatigue, and you make an unconscious decision to require nothing. You suppress your own struggles to avoid adding to the load. This is called pathological altruism. You bury your bad grades, your social anxiety, or your fears because you believe you must be the rock. You become the low-maintenance child to save your family. The result is a high-functioning but emotionally hollow adult experience. You struggle to identify your own needs because you have spent a lifetime prioritizing the vulnerability of others. Number 4 moves us into the physical brain, specifically the mirror neuron system. The impact of being ignored is not just in your mind. It is structurally encoded in the developing brain. Mirror neurons are brain cells that allow us to learn and empathize. In a healthy relationship, a parent mirrors the infant's emotion. If the baby cries, the parent frowns. If the baby coos, the parent smiles. This biofeedback teaches the child to identify their own internal states. But for you, this mirroring was absent. When you looked into your parent's face, you saw a blank screen or a distracted gaze. Without this reflection, the neural circuitry required to identify self-emotion remains underdeveloped. You feel a sensation, like anxiety, but you lack the neural map to label it. This leads to a condition called Alexithymia. This is a clinical term for having no words for your feelings. When asked how you feel, you might honestly answer, "I don't know," or "I feel nothing." This is not resistance. It is a neurological deficit caused by neglect. You feel the physical sensation of emotion, a stomachache, a headache, but the bridge to the language center is broken. Number 5 concerns your stress response and the HPA axis. While abuse often creates a hyperreactive nervous system, emotional neglect is linked to a blunted HPA axis reactivity. Your system adapted to a chronic lack of stimulation by hypofunctioning. Research shows that people with this history show reduced cortisol spikes in response to acute stress. This sounds like a good thing, but it is not resilience. It is a sign that your system has given up or dissociated. It correlates with the freeze or collapse response in the face of danger. Imagine a situation of high conflict. While others might fight or flee, you might feel a sudden wave of lethargy, passivity, or a sense of numbing out. You drift away from the moment. This is your body protecting you from the pain of being unheard. However, despite this blunted response, you likely carry a high baseline of internal stress, known as allostatic load. Number 6 is the development of hyper-independence. This is perhaps the most defining characteristic of the adult who was an ignored child. It is a trauma response driven by the fear of dependency. Asking for help triggers a deep sense of shame and a fear of rejection. You view needing others as a weakness or a danger. You operate on the core belief that if I don't do it, it won't get done. This often leads to professional burnout. You are the employee who cannot delegate, the partner who handles everything alone, the friend who never leans on anyone else. You have built a fortress of capability. Even when people offer you help, you likely refuse it. This reinforces your isolation and the false belief that you are fundamentally alone in the world. Number 7 explores the fawn response. While some of you became avoidant, others developed a strategy of pathological accommodation. You learned that to get any attention, you had to be useful. This is common in the glass-child dynamic. You learned to merge with the desires of others, becoming a chameleon. You are hypervigilant to the moods of those around you. You constantly adjust your behavior to maintain the emotional stability of the room. You repress your own preferences and opinions because you believe your only value lies in your utility. Over time, this leads to deep, unexpressed resentment. You lose your sense of identity because you no longer know where you end and the other person begins. You are everyone's therapist, but no one is yours. Number 8 addresses the long-term impact on your relationships. You likely have a dismissive-avoidant attachment style. You learn to deactivate your attachment system to avoid pain. Imagine craving connection, but feeling a wave of panic when someone actually gets close. You might find yourself retreating or shutting down whenever a partner attempts to be intimate. You learned to self-soothe using primitive methods. You suppress the desire for closeness because, in your history, reaching out resulted in grabbing a handful of empty air. But there is hope. Number 9 is about the path to recovery, starting with reparenting. Healing the ignored child requires providing the validation that you missed in childhood. Reparenting is not a metaphor. It is a neurological restructuring. It involves the adult you learning to treat the child you were with the compassion and attention you deserved. This means tuning into your feelings and naming them, even if it is difficult. It means validating your own distress instead of dismissing it. It means telling yourself, I am listening. You must learn to discipline yourself with kindness, not neglect. This involves creating routines for sleep and eating, treating your body as something worthy of care and maintenance. Number 10 involves a therapy called Somatic Experiencing. Because your trauma is stored in a functional freeze, talk therapy is often not enough. You need to thaw the nervous system. This involves pendulation, moving your attention between a safe place in your body and the tension of your emotions. This teaches your nervous system that it can tolerate sensation without overwhelming you. You practice orienting, using your 5 senses to ground yourself in the present moment. This signals safety to your amygdala, reducing dissociation and helping you inhabit your body again. Number 11 is internal family systems, or IFS. This approach helps you identify the exiles, the young, wounded parts of you that hold the pain of being ignored. For years, your manager parts, the perfectionist, the hyper-independent achiever, have kept these exiles locked away to protect you. But they need to be witnessed. By bringing self-energy, calm, curiosity, and compassion to these internal parts, you can unburden them. You can welcome the ignored child home and integrate them into your adult life. Finally, number 12 is about post-traumatic growth. While the scars of neglect are deep, the adaptive strategies you developed can be transmuted into profound strengths. You have spent a lifetime observing others. This has likely given you high emotional intelligence and hyper-empathy. You are attuned to micro-expressions and the unspoken needs of others. This makes you an incredible listener, a gifted writer, or a compassionate healer. Your history of being unseen makes you uniquely capable of seeing the invisible in other people. Your capacity for solitary focus and your rich inner world can blossom into incredible creativity. The lost child often becomes the artist, the novelist, or the innovator. The psychology of the ignored child is a narrative of survival through subtraction. Faced with an empty room, you subtracted yourself to reduce the pain of the void. But that trajectory is not immutable. The plasticity of your brain allows for profound repair. You can build the neural bridges that were never formed. You can learn the language of your own heart. The journey of the ignored child is ultimately a journey from invisibility to visibility. It is the process of slowly, painstakingly, and courageously daring to take up space in the world. You are allowed to have needs. You are allowed to be difficult. You are allowed to be loud. You are no longer required to be the easy one to earn your place on this earth. You survived the silence. Now, it is time to break it.